You're listening to the Talking Headways Podcast Network.
Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. Talking Mondays. Keep moving on.
Happy Monday. This is Mondays at the Red Wire, sponsored by our super generous Patreon supporters. I'm Jeff Wood, your host, and joined by Han Solo. That's right. Every Wookiee's favorite right-hand man is here to share the news. As we do, and we're Han Solo, we want to share a bit of what's coming up on Talking Headways and maybe a little bit of what's gone by. We had a lot of guests over the last few months on Mondays. Thanks to Chrissy and Tracy and Kate for chatting back and forth with us. We're just going to kind of catch up on some of the stuff that we had before. Also, the 4th of July weekend / holiday time, plus some Juneteenth in there, got in the way of some extra things that were going on. So I'm going to just kind of go through a bunch of stuff and really got a lot of great things to share from the past and the future. So we're looking forward to that. Like we said, we're going to share what's coming up with the Talking Headways podcast. So this Thursday is likely, I'm pretty sure, we talked last Thursday with Jolie Kirschbaum of the MTA, the SFMTA, and so she'll be on the show. We talked about a lot of interesting things, some fix-it stuff, some financing and whatnot. We didn't get into some of the gnarly topics. I didn't ask her about the 4th of July fireworks or things like that because it just, the conversation wasn't meant for that. But it might be interesting for folks who are in San Francisco, but outside of it as well, especially learning about what they did during the pandemic. My Kingwood episode is seriously almost done now. I know I've been saying that for a while now, and I say that stuff. I say stuff that I'm going to do things, and then I don't do it, and I feel really bad about it. But I re-recorded some audio that I thought was lacking with John Walsh, and so the bad audio is gone. The good audio is in. I'm doing some final edits. I'm almost finished. Hopefully we can release it soon. It'll be worth the wait, I think, and I hope, though I've been working on the darn thing for years for now, but it's finally coming to fruition, I think. Finally. I had some problems with the audio, and finally I just decided to swap them out. Sometimes things sound really bad, especially if you record it on a phone, and so we fixed that, hopefully, and so it'll sound much better, and I'll feel much better about it, releasing it specifically. Since April, we had lots of guests on Talking Headways, but you missed them. If you missed them, there are a few I want you all to go back and listen to. Benjamin Fong joined the show and talked about Amazon package delivery. It was super fascinating thinking about where all the fulfillment centers are. They don't actually share that with anybody or map it for anybody else, and it's probably all internal, but he's figured out a way to figure it out. So there's lots of really cool stuff there. We had a great chat with him. Michael Pollack joined the show to talk about his book, Sidewalk Nation. It's everywhere now. I know that he's been on lots of shows, but we had him early on, which was really exciting. Ryan Avent talked on the show about his book, In Good Faith, which seriously is one of the books I've been recommending most lately. If you're feeling down about the state of things out there in the world, please go read this one, especially the first part that goes through human history. I love this book and the perspective that it gave me. I just really can't recommend this book enough. Some of the stuff at the end, it talks about AI and things like that, and I didn't connect with that necessarily, but maybe some folks will. But the first part, the history part, the kind of connections that it made from early human evolution to cities is really, really fascinating. And the book is just super, bang on trend, as it were. Eric Dumbaugh came on the show to talk about his paper connecting land use and traffic deaths. We talked a little bit about that too with Kate, I believe, or was it Tracy? It might have been Tracy who we talked about that a little bit. Ryan Pazicki came on to talk about urban disorder. What a great episode that was as well. I don't really talk about it that much, especially living here in San Francisco, but it was definitely something we needed to talk about and something interesting to hear from his perspective. Bill Fulton was on last week. That was great to have Bill on finally after all these years. We've been acquaintances, and he's been a supporter of the podcast and the newsletter before, and I appreciate that. And we finally got to have him on and talk about some of the stuff he's been talking about in his Substack, The Future of Where. And then Will Poff Webster joined the show to talk about the Transit Abundance Playbook, which was really, really great. Lots of great pieces in there. I know, folks, it might be hard to go read all of them. I tried to. There may be one or two that I missed, but I tried to read all those pieces, and there were lots of really great ideas for reducing the cost of transportation projects. So we've been busy. Share these episodes if you love them with friends and colleagues. These are episodes that are already out, actually, so you can go and listen to them. Coming up, though, we've got Patrick Kennedy from Dallas scheduled. We've got an episode on satellite data for city understanding. We've got Josh Shank coming on, talk about his book, New Tricks for Old Bureaucracies. Wendy Zhao is coming on to talk about her dissertation on access at USC, which is a really fascinating paper. We discussed it briefly on the show. And our old friend Christoph Spieler's book just got to my house today, Transportation and the Shape of Cities. I haven't set up a thing, but I know Christoph and I talked about him coming on the show to talk about it whenever it was out many, many months ago. So I'm glad to see it in the print, and I'm super excited to have him back on the show. Christoph's one of our favorites. So much stuff. Stay tuned. Go back and listen to the old stuff if you haven't. And then on some sad news, as we covered with Kate, when Riley O'Neill passed away, who is a CDOT bike planner. Now Louisa Gagg, a Boston bike planner, also died on the street. It's always hard to talk about these because it sucks. It just really sucks that we keep losing people. And not just transportation planners. That's ridiculous that we've lost 2 specifically bike transportation planners on the streets because they were hit by cars. But just anybody who loses their life on the streets. It's just, sometimes I just at a loss for words because I know we work hard on this stuff and we try to make change and we try to get the people who are out there making change to understand the importance. We do the advocacy that we can with the effort that we can. And then, in this instances, it's just not enough yet. So we just got to keep going. It can't quit now. Sometimes it feels like that might be the best option, but it's not. So we got to keep going, keep pushing, keep making things better so we don't have more of this bummer news coming out about these things. So rest in peace, Louisa and Riley. Okay, hard again transition from that, but thanks again to everybody who's ordered Bus or Bike scarves and supporting the show. If you'd like to order one, just head on over to theoverheadwire.com or email me at theoverheadwire.com. theoverheadwire@gmail.com, I should say. Also, I've been loving the pictures of folks wearing scarves at their events and rallies and all that stuff. Keep sending those pictures in if you got them. As always, note as well, we really thank everybody for supporting the show, whether that's on Patreon, patreon.com/theoverheadwire, buying books off the bookshop site. You can buy any book you want if you're on our page, bookshop.org/shop/theoverheadwire. And then also you can order our Cars or Cholesterol merch. Any of the merch that you see on the TeePublic site is available, which is mugs and stickers and cups and hoodies and whatever else. bit.ly/cars or cholesterol. Thanks to Richard Wazensky for designing that logo. You can find him on Instagram at Dick David Sketches. Also, these make great gifts. So if you don't want one for you, maybe you want one for a friend or a supporter or somebody else in the world that might need some loving heart with congestion inside of it. Or actually, yes, congestion inside of it. We also strongly suggest folks also sign up for the newsletter. We've got a YouTube explainer up discussing what the big deal is about the newsletter in terms of the archive that we have. We've collected the archive for 13 years. And it's just, it's got 120,000 items now, I think, in it, tagged by topic and city. And so you can go in there and find anything. I had a colleague, I shared a call with a colleague, the link recently, and they were like, hey, do you have anything on superblocks in Barcelona? And I said, yes, we have 10 pages of stuff on superblocks from the last 13 years. So lots of really great stuff in there for researchers, lots of really great stuff for advocates and for folks who are interested in looking in the past. Maybe if you're going to a city that you don't know about, just kind of looking and seeing what's going on in that place. So lots of really great stuff there. And then if you're a supporter on Patreon, for just $1 a month, that's just 25 cents a Talking Headways episode, maybe even less if we're talking about all 6 episodes that come out a month. Yeah, so you can get the show without ads, ad-free. That doesn't mean this ad here, but without the ads that come on the outside or in the middle of the episode that show up these days. So ad-free, you can do it by doing $1 a month at Patreon. We really appreciate that support. It's really, really important to us, specifically if we want to keep on sharing the good word about what's happening in cities, what's on the transportation docket, what policy is being made. We do a lot of background stuff every day with the newsletter and then also on this podcast. So appreciate everybody who listens and subscribes and supports and Everybody, if you're hearing my voice now, you're doing everything good. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody who keeps coming back to the show. We've been doing this, obviously. We've been doing the newsletter for 20 years. We've been doing this podcast for 13 years. We've been doing the archive for 13 years. And I just, it's every day. It's super great to kind of come into my office and say, hey, I got some stuff to do for some people that really need it. So thank you so much. Okay. This is episode 195. We're live and in session. Before we get to the show, I want to let folks know that they can get this podcast and Talking Headways wherever you find a podcast, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, Overcast Podcasts, and of course, Apple Podcasts. Thanks to everybody who subscribes through podcatchers, which is all of you probably today because I don't advertise this podcast super much. The Monday show, Talking Headways, is a different deal. But if you get hooked on the Talking Headways and you show up on the Monday show, welcome. So if you feel so inclined as well, leave us a review on iTunes. We have lots of awesome reviews, but it's always helpful to get a few more and spread the love out into the world. Okay, here we are. The news. This is the part of the show you all have been waiting for. We got a lot to cover today because I just kind of went back into the last few months of news and said, hey, is there anything interesting in here that I shared in the newsletter that I thought was going to be missed from the last 4 conversations that I had with Tracy, Caden, and Chrissy. And there's a lot. And there's a lot from the last few weeks. Obviously, the Road to Housing Act passed. There's lots of stuff that's going on, but also articles that I think help everybody in their advocacy, information about research and things like that. So there's a lot here today, as we always do when we're Han Solo. We go through a lot of news, but I think it'll be worth our while. All right. What's in the Road to Housing Act? Well, the Road to Housing Act is sitting on the desk in the White House. Actually, not anymore. It's passed now. Emma Waters shares what's actually in the legislation, including changes to regulations surrounding manufactured housing, greater access to small dollar mortgages, guidelines for permitting single-stair buildings, the creation of publicly owned land databases, and best practices for local zoning policy reform. There's a lot in this bill, but this piece is pretty comprehensive. This was by Emma Waters in the Bipartisan Policy Institute. I haven't read the one from Turner Center yet. I saw that today. There's a bunch of ones that show up articles that showed up are like, here's what's in it, but it didn't include everything, obviously. This article specifically was one of the best ones. It had everything kind of laid out in sections and what everything was. There's a lot of great stuff in there, like changing the rules around manufactured housing and stuff like that. So I really, really hope if you're interested in the housing bill that just got passed, that you can go to this specific, the Bipartisan Policy Institute page on this specific item and check it out. Of course, I have everything in the show notes, so people can go in and check it out there too. Go to that page. Mobility Wallet pilot. Los Angeles Mobility Wallet pilot program gave $150 a month to 1,000 participants to use on share modes around the city. Researchers interviewing the recipients before, during, and after the program found that there were benefits not just to transportation, but overall quality of life. Participants reported increasing feelings of freedom and independence, decreased stress, and more financial security. This was by Tamika Butler and Madeline Brosen and others for the Journal of the American Planning Association. We had Madeline on the show to talk about kind of an initial take on this, another article that they'd written about this, and this is just an extension of that, I believe. But really interesting stuff, especially the parts about the financial security people felt, the freedom and independence we felt. When we had the Alexes on to talk about transportation insecurity, I thought that was really interesting, and kind of connecting these two together is a fascinating thing. Thinking about how if you are transportation insecure, you're also have in a weird mental space too. You have to ask for a lot of help. You have to ask for rides. You have to think about whether you want to go see your friends and whether it's going to cost you money and all those things. And so the financial and freedom and the independence, the stress reduction from actually just having money each month to make your travel budget is really, really helpful for folks. And this research really bears that out. So really interesting stuff. Cities fail on night transportation. Demand for transportation doesn't drop after dark. It just shifts to those who have the least flexibility and can afford disruption, argues Mary Mohabi. Transportation agencies often fail at the switch from day to night because they reduce service and staffing to levels that make a misconnection frustrating and catastrophic. Several cities, though, such as Madrid, Barcelona, and Seoul, buck this trend, recognizing night mobility as a public good. This was by Mehri Mohebi and ITS International. Yeah, there's a couple examples of really good stuff, service late at night and those types of things. But I do want to say, like, Similar to like the article that we talked about with Mark Brown discussing how weekend service impacts how people feel like they can get around a city, whether they need a car or not. The 5 days of the work week are usually pretty good, but then the weekend determines basically whether people are going to get a car or not. Because whether the service is good or not, then, if you can't get around, then you're going to look for alternative options. And this is kind of a similar thing. The service during the daylight hours of the workday is usually pretty good in most cities. But when after dark and after midnight, specifically here in San Francisco, things get bad in terms of the access that you have compared to the daytime. And so if everything can be consistently accessible, it makes lives easier for folks and makes it easier to ditch a car if you really want to. You can go from a 2-car family to a 1-car family, or you can go from 1 car to no car if you have that access available. But if not, it's harder. And so this is an interesting look at not just the weekend that we talked about, but also the nighttime. Buses may be key to the next Prime Minister. Former Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham is expected to be England's next Prime Minister. His success at running Manchester's transit agency by consolidating private lines, providing more frequent service, and fare capping could lead to the most important political office in the country. This was by Stephen Castle in the New York Times. Yeah, the B network, they basically consolidated a bunch of private lines and then, painted all the buses yellow. The B is very important to Manchester culture and work. What's the word I'm looking for? Identity, the city's identity, worker bee. And so, he's done really great stuff with the bus service up there. And so one can hope that if he does become prime minister, he can help with all the transportation around the country as well, making things better for folks by making the transit services run better, moving away from Margaret Thatcher's, basically move so many years ago to privatize everything. And which ultimately led to worse outcomes for a lot of cities in England. Okay. Costco is the anti-Amazon logistically. While Amazon has created a highly automated and sophisticated logistics system to get goods to people in short amount of time, Costco keeps costs low by limiting products they sell and their logistics network. This allows Costco to retain employees through more generation payment and benefits. More generous payment and benefits. The company could be a model for public grocery stores like those in New York City wants to implement. Benjamin Fong in Pheonomenal World. We had Ben on talk about his Amazon stuff, and if you haven't read that piece that he had in Urban Omnibus, this one is great too. He writes for Pheonomenal World pretty often. Man, one thing about computers these days that really bothers me, and we'll go back to the Amazon thing in a second, but that I just made an error on my reading, and I realized that the reason why I've been making more errors in my reading lately is that the autocorrect doesn't actually pay attention to what I type. It actually changes it to something else that it thinks I want. And this is why AI and stuff bothers me sometimes. So and I don't put any of this through AI, but I think all those systems go into Microsoft Word, and when you type things into the system, or the autocorrect is basically the same kind of thing. But it's so frustrating because I've noticed lately that this happens more and more, that the autocorrect changes, and it changes after the fact. I know that I didn't write generation, and I knew that I wrote generous, not generation. I was like, what is the word I meant to write? Or I did write actually. And then I realized I did write it, but it got switched. So anyways, minor frustration. I wonder if you all are frustrated with the same thing. It happens more and more often, and I'm really grumpy about it. So basically, since Amazon delivers anything and everything, they have these huge logistical systems that take care of that. And they also have it delivered in the next morning or the next day, which is a ridiculous time frame. And then Costco just delivers everything from the suppliers to their stores, and their store is basically a warehouse, and people go to the warehouse and then purchase things, but they have a limited number of SKUs, which is the codes that mark goods and stuff. And so they use that savings that they don't have to automate, or they don't have to basically deliver anything and everything under the sun in the next day, which is very expensive. They don't have to have those costs. And so they pass that along to their employees, and then pass that along to the members of Costco. And I think that's really fascinating. And so if cities like New York City and like Mayor Mamdani are talking about doing public grocery stores and food deserts, this might be the way to go to make things cheaper and cost less, especially from a public option standpoint. The grocers, as we talked about on the episode with Stacey Mitchell about kind of the Robinson-Patman Act and all the big box consolidation and stuff like that, a lot of these stores have really consolidated, and they've consolidated their supply chains, they've consolidated their competition, and they've really created all these food deserts around the country that didn't exist before that. before the anti-competitive streak that they have. So for cities to compete or for places to have grocery stores again, they might follow the Costco model, which reduce costs to do business. And grocery stores, it's a messy business because there's so many products they have to bring in and the deals they have to make. I'm sure the buyers and stuff is a lot of work. I'm sure that that's part of it, but it's interesting to think about what you can do if you start modeling a good example like Costco versus kind of a messy one like Amazon. Authentic places. What makes a place feel authentic? According to Harvard professor Stephen F. Gray, a number of things contribute to the feeling, including who builds place, who gets to stay, and whether all the uses and people connect to each other in a meaningful way. While they might try, developers can't theme their way to authenticity, and the constant back and forth between place and its people gives them their agency. This is by Cy Bowles in the Harvard Gazette. If you've ever wondered about authentic places or themed places, there's places that are themed that can feel authentic. But I do think that there's something to be said about the patina that exists when we age a place. New places feel not as good because they haven't been lived in as much. This doesn't mean they're not good, or they're just not as friendly, or maybe not, that's not the right word. Maybe not friendly, but like just like relatable, or I'm trying to come up with a word and I can't do it. But, you know, it's just there's something about authenticity that's real versus, kind of faked theme or faked ideals that go into a building. And you can sense it. You know it when you see it, or you know it when you feel it when you're in a place. You're like, oh, this is a real place, a real old place. I got that feeling kind of when I know it's very commercial, but like when I was in Carmel a couple of months ago, I got that feeling because it's been there a while and it's got the vines everywhere and the bricks are a little chipped and there's like all the businesses have either gone in or out, or they've been there a long time because they're successful, or there's new businesses or old businesses, and they're mixed together in a hodgepodge, but it makes sense. So just a thought to think about, like what makes a place feel authentic. And what Stephen argues basically is that, how the place interacts with the people and the people interact with the place. If people have been living there a while, or if they are part of it, and it comes and changes slowly over time, I think that becomes more authentic versus something that's staged or just kind of like not doesn't feel real. And you can compare this with, say, like Disneyland or the Grove or whatever else. We had Kevin Kelly on, and he talked about how to make stores feel more authentic, or at least make them feel more experiential. And that was really interesting to hear about that and the change, or the way you could compete with an Amazon or a Costco or something like that if you are a store, because you're not going to beat them on price, but you can beat them on experience. But it has to be a real, authentic experience, or at least one that feels correct. So I think that's really fascinating. Okay, those are the items from the last week, but we have a lot of bonus items here. So there's a number of things to get through, as I mentioned. I don't know why I went back and got so many, but here they are. I'll just kind of go through them. And if I have any comments, I'll make some comments. But the real thing about this, and when I do the Monday show and I have the Han Solo items, I just feel like if I can get you all more news and it's interesting, I think that's important, because there's just there's so much out there. But if I can kind of curate it a little bit more to this, I think it's helpful. But maybe you guys can tell me how you feel about me going through so many articles. Maybe you like the back and forth of 4 articles when I have guests on, or maybe you like the 30 shot that we get when we do a Han Solo Mondays. But I like both of them. But you all might like one or the other. I'm not sure. Okay, once a year in Cumberland, Maine, the streets are closed for the migration of amphibians. The migration has changed the way the city looks at infrastructure maintenance and road design, and shows us how we've impacted natural systems cut off by roads and settlement. This was in Grist. This reminds me of Ben Goldfarb's Crossings, and I think he might have talked about something similar, where in the Northeast, in Maine, it might have been Cumberland, Maine, but they close off the streets for the amphibians so they can cross the road, and so nobody squishes them, and so they can mate and continue. We know now that tires and tire waste are not good for humans or fish or anything else, but our roads have cut through natural systems so much that we've forever changed the ecosystem that we are part of in the United States. But there are ways of interventions that actually are helpful, which is really fascinating. With funding running out and transit service disappearing, many more Americans are suffering from food insecurity due to lack of accessibility to grocery stores. Research has shown that people are less likely to buy healthy food if their transit options are reduced or disappear. This was in The Guardian. Yeah, so part of the thing about food deserts as well is that if you have a transportation option to get to a grocery store that's far away, it doesn't help if that transportation option disappears. So when transit service is reduced, that reduces the ability of people to get better food options, better health options. And so transportation and land uses really is put together in one thing, but it's also, something that I don't know if people really think about those things. Like most people who drive cars, they don't really think about the need to actually go somewhere else to get groceries because it's always accessible to them because they can always just drive there, even if they're in a suburban setting. I think this is a really important discussion to have is like, it's not just the food deserts and where they are, it's actually the access to actual grocery stores. And so if we can change the equation for both sides, if we can put more grocery stores in neighborhoods where people need them and as well provide better service so that people can get to the places that they want, that'd be great too. Another thing is that people might live near a grocery store, but it might not be the one that they prefer. They might need a Hispanic grocery store or like a Chinese grocery store or an Asian foods or whatever it might be. And so the grocery store next to them might not provide them with what they need. It's interesting to now we have all these delivery options, which makes things easy, but it's also expensive. There's We, right? So We delivers Asian and Hispanic foods, but also there's grocery stores that do the same thing. And so the access issue is part of that too. Okay. Automatic enforcement cameras in San Francisco have reduced speeding 10 miles per hour over the limit by 80%. Fines are given when vehicles travel 10 miles per hour or over, and most drivers that have been cited were not repeat offenders. This shows the benefits of these enforcement cameras. And I know people hate them because then they get tickets, but then they're also speeding. So I've been guilty myself. Obviously, I just got a ticket in Idaho going too fast at a speed trap, but that wasn't necessarily this, but this was in the San Francisco Examiner. Yeah, more speed cameras to slow people down. We need more slower speeds. Los Angeles opened the most recently completed segment of its subway system to much fanfare over the weekend. Now Beverly Hills to downtown takes just 21 minutes on the subway. This was in The Guardian. This was talking about the D-line extension. I don't know if we talked about this very much on the show before, but yeah, so I've always been a supporter of the subway to the sea. Keep going, D-line, go into UCLA, go into Westwood, go into the ocean if it needs to. Really cool. That is actually being constructed and finishing up. Cool. Keep going. A new research paper shows how big the road lobby actually is and how much they influence lawmakers to continue building more roads. 8 different trade associations create an extensive connective web building between road builders, oil companies, and Congress. This was in the Union of Concerned Scientists. So yeah, there's a big network out there pushing for road building and expansion and transportation policy. It's hard to replicate and it's hard to push back on, but it exists, and they did a really good job, Union of Concerned Scientists, of mapping all this out. New Mexico has become the first state in the country to provide universal child care to residents. The state has made it a priority to support the education of children from birth to the point where they launch a career. This is in Governing Magazine. So this is great. I like the child care aspect of this, thinking about all the things that cost people money: healthcare, childcare, elder care, food, insurance, housing, transportation, all this stuff. It's expensive, especially it adds up over time. And then entertainment, all that stuff. It adds up over time. And so if you could just make people's lives a little easier. I know that childcare is just such a big deal nowadays, and it's so expensive these days that if you can help people by giving people the support that they need that they might not have, that's great. Short flights of less than 250 miles have declined for airlines, while flights over 500 miles have grown. The shorter flights cost more, which means they drag airline productivity down, but also are rarely connected by other modes that could be more efficient, like rail or bus, because of the placement of airports. This was in NPR. This is another reason why I think we should have high-speed rail everywhere, just connecting all the smaller towns and cities that might have an airport, but it would just be easier to get on the train. And it would cost the airlines less. I mean, we do subsidize these, so if we're going to subsidize them, why don't we connect these places with more places instead of just a main hub airport? If you're going to, connect a Normal, Illinois with St. Louis or Chicago, why not connect with a bunch of other places that people want to go along the way instead of just having one airline? So you actually have a bigger benefit that way. It's something that we talked about a lot, but I just really think that's true. Psychologist Greet Aro in Tallinn, Estonia, notes that while there are playgrounds for children and consumer points such as coffee shops for adults, there's no space for those in between to just be without purchasing something. Grit suggests creating a mayor for children and youth that can address these issues by gathering input from young people. This was in err.ee. This reminds me of this discussion about teen takeovers. This has been a bigger thing these days. But really, teenagers, young people past playground age don't have a lot of places to go. I mean, remember when I was younger, we had the Greenbelts. We had the place to go on our bikes. We could go see our friends play basketball. We could go to the baseball card shop to get a Slurpee or whatever it might be. There were places to go, places to hang out because we had access, because we had transportation. We could get on our bikes and go places. But kids these days, they can go on their bikes and go places. But in the suburban areas that many people live, there's not really a lot of places to go. So they congregate. And also probably social media connects them too. And so they congregate places. They want to have experiences. And we just don't provide that for them. There's no playgrounds. There's no coffee shops. There's nowhere where people can be that just is free. And so there has to be something along those lines for them, or else they're going to find things to do with their time. While much of the discussion about heat in cities is about concrete and the urban heat island, less is understood about the heat impacts of traffic. Much of the energy created by internal combustion engines is lost to heat and emissions, and researchers have found that traffic is responsible for small but notable rises in urban heat. This was in the conversation. The Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research found that reducing commutes is key to reducing emissions. The solutions they believe are urban densification near places of work and city centers. This is the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. I was going to make a comment about a blog I saw today, but I should probably just leave it alone. Anyways, there's a lot of folks out there that are saying that maybe the suburbs are okay, and I don't necessarily agree with that from a certain point of view. I think the suburbs are okay if they're organized correctly, but the way that they're laid out and streets are organized in a very sprawly but also wide and wasteful fashion is not good. Also, the further you are away from city centers or job centers, the more commute you have and the more soul-sucking it is. It's really not great, but that's my opinion. New research suggests that the 6-ppd chemical in car tires that has been known to kill Chinook salmon is also dangerous to human health. Researchers found exposure to the chemical induced rapid cell death in human immune cells. So they found that there's the cocktail, a mixture of chemicals that come from tires cause this macrophage failure. And also there's been other research from China recently that talks about the 6-ppdq causing Alzheimer's as well. So these chemicals that we're using in our tires and that comes from our exhaust from the cars is not good for human health. Some of the benefits that we've gotten from healthcare have been negated by some of the chemicals and the stuff that we use out there. And it's something that, again, I think about. I think about the commercial street that's nearby me and whether every time I'm walking down it every day almost when I take my daughter to school, whether I'm just breathing in all this junk that's going to give me a hard time later in life. San Diego has gone from a city with dwindling water supplies to a surplus thanks to aggressive conservation programs, water recycling and desalination, which creates seawater out of freshwater, which creates freshwater out of seawater. I messed that one up too. Now the city is considering selling some of its precious Colorado River water rights. That was a big deal. It's interesting to see some of these cities that have seen a water problem coming and fix it. And I know that places like, we talked about this with Kyle Paoletta in his book about the Southwest. What's interesting is a lot of cities are actually doing this really great with water recycling and stuff, but it's still getting pulled out because of the water rights that are allocated to people along the rivers. All the dams are kind of getting lower and lower and in terms of water. And so there's going to have to be kind of a reckoning, I think, in terms of this. And San Diego is on the right side of it. I think El Paso and I think it was Phoenix who recycle a lot of their water are getting on the end of this, but we need to do more. And a lot of the development in some of these desert places where there's not a lot of water is, I don't know if it's sustainable because of this water issue and whether they can, get more out of the river is one thing or another. They might have to go to the ocean to get it. And then that creates its own problems because you're creating so much salt byproduct. There's been a lot of discussion about different ways to fix that, but it's going to be real expensive. European cities with large amounts of purchasing power are using the public procurement process to address environmental, digital, and social goals. The introduction of long-term goals and cooperation between entities is seen as a positive for companies. This is in Eurocities. An infrastructure network of fungi connects nearly 3/4 of all plant species around the world. Arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi act as extensions to plant roots, exchanging water and nutrients while connecting carbon plants have absorbed from the atmosphere. This is in Grist. This is the really interesting stuff that's been discussed over the last decade or so about the underwater network, or the underground networks that are connecting trees and plants and nature together through this fungi network. And there's some discussion and back and forth about whether it's as extensive as some people think it is. The woman that wrote the book, The Mother Tree, really is a big fan of this theory that this is actually very extensive. And then there's folks that have pushed back on her. But it's really interesting to think about whether there's an underground network. There's studies and researchers that are looking at, say, like when you plant a tree in a parking lot and it's all by itself, it might not do so well because it's all by itself. But if you build conduits to the other trees in the parking lot, they can actually work together and share nutrients and stuff through these mycorrhizal networks. And so when we're thinking about like verdant design or green infrastructure or those types of things, you have to think not just about the individual piece of something, but the networks. And so I think this is a really important part of talking about that. Thinking about when we do think about green corridors or urban cooling, when it comes to the heat island effect or whatever else, the network of plants and systems is really important, not just the individual. A new Colorado law will require automakers to recycle batteries free of charge if electric vehicle batteries aren't repurposed after retirement. Automakers must also report the number of batteries recovered and rates of materials harvested. This is in the Drive. Inspired by his wife's work as a ballet choreographer, famed architect Lawrence Halprin designed spaces that were scored yet left open to participation by residents during the process. This process resulted in the downtown pedestrian mall in Charlottesville, Virginia, though the project has changed as commercial interest overwhelmed the original intent. This is in Charlottesville Magazine. According to one of the bidders of Chicago's parking meter deal, Mayor Brandon Johnson's administration offered $3.3 billion to regain control of the parking meters. The city lost to a bad investment deal. This was in Block Club, Chicago. Yeah, $3.3 billion. I don't know. Why can't they just take these parking meters back with eminent domain? It was a bad deal. The company that bought them in the first place already made their money back. Just do eminent domain and just take them back. I don't understand why it was sold in the first place. That was the dumbest move that the mayor could have done. It wasn't this mayor, obviously. But now they're talking about whoa, well, let's buy them back for $3.3 billion. Well, then you have to pay that company, and then you have to jack up the meter rates, and then you basically have to take, you're paying all that parking meter revenue that could have gone to the city and moving it somewhere else. And then also you can't move your parking meters, or if you do, you have to pay the company. If you have bike lanes or bus lanes or whatever it is on the side, then you have to keep the park. It's ridiculous. The whole thing was ridiculous, and whoever thought this was a good idea in the first place is just they should not be allowed to work in government anymore. I know it was Mayor Daley. He's gone, obviously, but I don't know whoever brokered this deal, and I haven't looked it up, but I probably should. They should be shunned because it was a horrible deal, and it's one of the worst deals in the history of cities. Okay, and finally, inside of Hanoi, Vietnam's Ring Road, transit will be free as a new low-emission zone pilot was initiated on July 1st. The low-emission zone pilot is part of a larger program that includes bus electrification, improving energy stations for clean vehicles, and building exterior park and ride systems. This is in the Vietnam Investment Review. All these countries around the world are starting to really look into reducing emissions after London saw such great success with its low emission zone. The reductions in nitrous oxide pollution, 40% is a huge amount. And so in Vietnam, obviously, they have a lot of motorbikes and other conveyances where people are polluting because those bikes, the two-stroke engines are even more polluting, I think, than cars. So at least in the United States. And so these low emission zones are really, really going to be key for them reducing emissions and reducing pollution. Okay, this week and every week, I want to thank our generous Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome and keep the show going by listening and supporting each month. This show and Talking Highways would really not be here without you. So thank you very much. And you can support the show by going to patreon.com/theoverheadwire. $2 a month will get you some stickers and a handwritten note. $10 a month will get you your scarf. $1 a month will get you this podcast ad-free. We really appreciate those who have supported at the $10 level or more on the Patreon. Andrew, Ben, Derek, Gabriel, Glenn, Greg, James, Jeremy, Jim, Joseph, Catherine, Mao, Marcus, Matthew, Mike, Nicholas, Abraham, Oliver, Steve, Abby, Matthew, Sylvia, and Andrew A. You guys are awesome. And so I just really want to thank everybody for supporting the show, whether you're listening whether you bought books off the bookshop site, whether you do a Patreon supporter. If you listen to the ads, that helps us out too. We just really appreciate it. And I really like all the comments that folks send in too. So we'll talk about that. Listener questions and comments. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to tweet at us or comment on any of the social sites where the podcast appears. You can tweet at us. Obviously, we'll share that in a second. I'll do the Blue Sky, Threads, Mastodon, et cetera, et cetera. But you can find me at theoverheadwire@gmail.com. If you have questions, shoot them over to me on that email address. And I love seeing your letters and notes and corrections and suggestions and all that stuff. It's really, really great when I get an email from folks who are listening to the show. And finally, puppies and butterflies. This is the part of the show where we talk about something fun, interesting, or maybe just didn't fit in the other sections. There's a new Star Wars Visions show coming out, which is called The Ninth Jedi. It's anime. It has no connection to the existing story, which I think might make it palatable for a lot of folks. But I think it's going to be really cool. The Ninth Jedi in the original Visions section was really cool and fun. I hope that folks enjoy this one as well. And then I'll talk about it in the city functions of it all, etc. The World Cup continues. Again, I have no love for FIFA or Infantino or anybody else. The whole Balogun thing was a mess. Sad the way that the U.S. went out. We played so well in the first 4 games, and then we just kind of like said, oh, we're scared now in the 5th game. Crazy. But yeah, so I love the World Cup. The last 4 teams are coming up, and we'll see how it ends. I hope that the best team wins, and it's not refereeing or interference that creates it. But I'm sure that somebody good will win. It looks like France is probably the favorite right now. Obviously, the last 4 teams are very, very good. Spain is probably the least on the totem pole. Argentina, England can go either way. Argentina's got 9 lives. England has been looking really good. So maybe it's an England-France final. I don't know, but we'll see. Argentina has been kind of losing goodwill, I think, throughout the tournament. But it'll be interesting to see what the end is. I love soccer, and I hope that it's a good ending. And then also, I'll be taking a vacation soon, so we won't be here in 2 weeks, but we'll be here in 4. Just want to let folks know so that they're not waiting patiently by their phone to get a new episode of the Monday show. Also, the summer seems to be kind of slow with news sometimes, so July, August is kind of a slowdown. And then in September, I'm going to be in Austin for a conference, the Movability Austin Conference. I'll be the keynote speaker there, so look out for that if you're in town. And then lots of stuff going on in the fall as well. Of course, the Impact Conference in Toronto, I'll be there too. So if you have some friends in Toronto or you want to hang out, let me know. Send me an email at theoverheadwire@gmail.com. Okay, so you can find me on Blue Sky, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Instagram, sometimes Threads, Substack, YouTube, and of course on my website and in your inbox every morning if you sign up for the newsletter. And on Flickr, we're known as Transit Nerds. Everything else is at The Overhead Wire. You can also find my writing on theoverheadwire.com. Thanks for joining us at Mondays at The Overhead Wire. Thanks to our generous Patreons for sponsoring this week's podcast. We really appreciate it. Thank you all for listening and supporting. And I hope you love the episodes that are coming up of the show. We've got some great ones, so stay tuned. And we'll see you next time.